Okay.
Hi, how are you?
Good, you? Oh,
Thanks for your help.
of course.
Okay, 10 years.
Did it not go?
Yeah.
Let's see. Live in 3 minutes. Refresh your page. Is it just Amy Ticker?
Yeah. Maybe it's because it's me.
No, I turned them off. If you get up to me, you flash I was like,
Sometimes I'm a little early on.
yeah, this morning was early. I'm like,
Wake up, Mike.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. We're gonna go ahead and get started. We'd like to start and end so I can go to bed. So that's all I'm saying. I'm Sue Hanson, Montrose County Commissioner, and I don't know why nobody's up here. But what's the deal? Is there?
Yeah, it's just a
I did
little
put
delay on it.
I think we all did, so, anyway, thank you all for taking time, it's cold outside, really appreciate you being here, to listen to what we're doing. So, the first thing that we like to do is start with the pledge, and I asked Commissioner Dunlap, where are you? So lead us in the pledge, so, the flag's back here.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And we have a couple of, I just wanted to make a couple of introductions. We do, Montrose County does have two new commissioners, Commissioner Dunlap, who you just saw, and Commissioner Jarvis, right here, Scott Jarvis. Give a round of applause. So we had our first couple of meetings, we had a peaceful transfer of power. So we're really, so want to start this meeting off with just sort of a note of civility and respect that we're all adults here. We want to hear from everybody. Primarily, this meeting is to catch you up on what the work group has been doing and explain, sort of demystify the work group. This is the work group here, and I'll introduce them in a minute. So I'll make sure you know who they are. But I just wanted to set the tone that we'd like to have a exchange of ideas. We mostly want to hear from you. The work group, the image of the work group has kind of gotten blown out of proportion. So we wanted to put it in perspective so everybody kind of knew what we were doing. We really have shared values. I know that we have folks in this room that disagree. Some people want certain things, but we all have shared values, and we know that because you all love living here. We're in the West End, beautiful area, and most of you raised with great family values, and we want to make sure that we all share those values. So part of this is to have an honest, open conversation, respect each other, and respect each other's points of view. So with that, let me go ahead and introduce our work group. And just so you know, the work group, we met about a dozen times, 10 times, pretty much just our group here. And 2 times we met with some of the congressional delegation on the ground at Bull Canyon, looking at the land, trying to sort of discuss what boundaries might work, what could work, just sort of spitballing ideas. And then we convened mostly virtually to sort of talk about what's possible and how can we engage the public in vote. How could we position something so that the public can have the most say in whatever it is. Recognizing that many of us that live in the West End, of you that live in the West End, we want everything to remain the same. But with impending pressures from NGOs and environmental groups, we felt like there was an urgency to do something. And the something that we started working on was the NCA, which allows for broad public input. And the community has a say, and we felt like that was one of the most important things. The way we're going to work is as I introduce the work group, they will, each of them have something to say about their role on the work group. And we have Commissioner Davis from Mesa County could be here, so we have a statement from him. And John Reams, who was also on the work group, we have a statement from him as well. So again, we will answer whatever questions you have. We want to hear what you have to say. And this process is by no means over at this point. In fact, with the change in administration, it may just be beginning again. So when you think about what's happened with our administration, the values, some of the priorities might change, a change in the Secretary of Interior, all of that will necessitate some changes in how we think things through, maybe the strategy. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce, first we have Sam Redmond, and I wanted to just tell you what I was so busy chatting. So Sam Redmond is Mesa County. He is on the GIS team there, and he mostly contributed to the work group through his mapping efforts. He's a genius at putting maps together. And we do have 2 maps that we kind of ended up with, and we'll explain that when we get down to Lisa. But Sam, the mapping efforts for the working group's alternative proposals. So when they submitted the 400,000 acre map, which of course threw us for a loop, we countered with a much narrower boundary. And he developed the Dolores Canyons mapping tool, so he could go online with Lisa Gage, our GIS director. So they would be able to provide information on mining and grazing. You could actually see on the map where those areas are. So, and next, hold on a second. Justin Musser is our Natural Resources Director for Montrose County. Justin is awesome, and I mean, he really, that's not written down. He didn't write that in his bio, but he really helped us communicate some of the ideas and some of the things that we felt were non-negotiables to the proponents. So he was invaluable in that information. So he's worked with West End. Some of you may know him. He works with West End landowners, federal, state, and nonprofit partners on natural resources issues. He's done that for about 15 years. He has experience in the natural resources project management, policy review, collaborative partnerships, and his input helps bridge the gap between conservation policies and rural and rural conditions. He's what we talk when we think about people that are protecting land and talking about land. He's actually a common sense kind of a natural resources director. We really value his perspective in Montrose County. Next to Justin is Paul Szilagyi. Many of you may know him. He's the CEO of NM-NCA, a private mining company with active mining claims and permits operating out of the West End since 2006. Paul was an advisor on mining laws, regulation, USGS, critical mineral evaluations, USGS determinations of permanently protected lands, risks from wilderness designations, the Antiquities Act, and public lands beliefs of Teddy Roosevelt. Paul has been instrumental in helping us identify areas that we wanted to protect that had to do with mining, bringing lots of information from lands that were already protected through the USGS and helping us understand those issues. Next to Paul, Amber, now let me get yours. Amber, sorry guys. Amber is the Natural Resources Director for Mesa County, and she contributed to the development of Mesa County's Dolores Proposals website, which you can go on. We ask for public comment. You can go on and you can look at the maps there. which served as an information hub covering the national monument proposition, opposition efforts, public lands management, and current protections in the region, Mesa County's data collection through the Magellan and mapping surveys, and feedback on the National Conservation Area Map created by the work. Many of you did reply to there, and we got your messages loud and clear. So that was correct, Amber. And next to Amber is Janie Van Winkle, and Janie Van Winkle of the Van Winkle Ranches, and also Jody Blinder were our ag consultants, and talked to us about, areas that would be endangered or at risk for any boundary adjustments when regarding ranching and grazing rights and that sort of thing. When we looked at this, even when the group came together, the important things were grazing rights, water rights, mining rights, recreation rights, and road access were the things that we considered and we wouldn't want to compromise on. So that's Janie Van Winkle. Lisa Gage is she's our manager for GIS. She focused on a lot of the geographic data for Montrose County, and she coordinated with Mesa County GIS team to provide the maps that some of you are seeing here. There was a lot of mapping done, a lot of spitballing about what boundaries we could or couldn't live with, and we went back and forth pretty much in all those 10 meetings discussing those things. And finally, and not last, Amy Tooker, lifelong resident, many of you know her, lifelong resident of the West End, owner of 2 Main Street businesses in Nucla, currently the secretary treasurer of the Colorado Cooperative. She also represents Montrose County on the Southwest Basin Roundtable, where she keeps in touch with water issues that are important to all of us. She was appointed in 2022 and currently serves on the Office of Just Transition for coal impacted communities, where she advocates for the West End and other areas of coal impacted issues. And then we have Chris Daniels, and Chris Daniels is our timer. So we
Part
are.
of the committee.
She's not on the committee. Is that a decision? Do you want to move your chair over a little bit? So, and some of you might have noticed that I brought my construction hat because I thought maybe I'm going to get some time or something like that. No, seriously, I don't even think we need law enforcement. We're here to have a conversation, hear what you think, and sort of debunk all the rumors that you might have already been thinking about or that you already think happened on this working group. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amy first. And we're going to say our piece and give you a little bit of more information about the working groups. And ask us anything. We have no secrets. Ask us anything, and then we'll turn it over to public comment. So, Amy.
Like you, I celebrate and give a sigh of relief that we successfully stopped the massive Dolores River proposal making it to Biden's desk. There's a lot of us that worked really hard over the last year and a half in making sure that didn't get there. I would like to thank Senator Hickenlooper and Senator Bennett for heeding the cries and the opposition of these communities and not pushing the monument proposal forward. They could have easily done that and just ignored us, but that they actually listened and were really concerned that the communities were involved in the beginning of the process. There is still a lot of work to do in Washington, D.C. to make sure that this type of overreach does not happen again. Last week, Congressman Malloy from Utah introduced a bill to amend the Antiquities Act of 1906. That act and many others are the reason that we've gotten to this point. So moving forward, it is clear that we must be proactive rather than reactive to sustain the values and culture that we all love about living here. In times of uncertainty and challenge, it's important to remember that we are stronger together. Each of us brings unique strengths, perspectives, and talents to the table. And I encourage all of you to get involved, stay informed, and join boards and committees. Staying informed is how we can move forward and bring all perspectives to the table in shaping the future that we want for this community. Thank you for coming here this evening, and I look forward to hearing from you and engaging in many more conversations regarding the future of the West End.
So I didn't prepare any remarks. I'm not gonna look at the timer. I'm just gonna thank each and every one here, because everybody did something. Some people did a lot more than others, and some people put a lot on the line. I'm gonna give a little shout out to Sean Pond and for what he did. And you should all give yourself a clap, because this wouldn't have been stopped if people didn't show up in Natarita, if people didn't show up in Nucla, and if people, and I'm gonna pat myself on the back, push back on half-truths that just was not so. There were people that were well out in advance of us for a long time, trying to push a monument down this community's throat. I think we should celebrate that that did not happen. Can I keep going, sir? So I think what we have now, and I'm going to put on my mining hat and mining laws, we have a new president. Amongst the many executive orders he put out was one that we are in an energy emergency. And he wants feedback that says, what do we need to do to provide critical minerals, specifically called out uranium, which has been off the list before. And I think he's serious. And I think we have a chance of, as a community, to figure out what's the best way to manage our public lands, protect the Western way of life. And if you guys want to side with me, I'd like to protect the mining industry too.
Justin, it's your turn.
I didn't prepare anything either. That's true though, I didn't prepare anything. Good bunch of people up here. These can be hard processes. I think going into this whole thing, it's I think that's what really stood out to me the most. We're trying to push this national monument, not getting local input in this process. There's a lot going out there on that landscape, and sadly, this strikes really close to home for you guys. In a lot of ways, for me, this is kind of one really good example of a larger trend that we're seeing across a lot of our. Looking out at the national monument proposal, this is kind of an interesting part of the world for that reason. I think this NCA that we're discussing in this room today, this will be at least the third, if not the fourth, discussion there has been about NCAs. There's wilderness study areas. There's wilderness area proposals out here. There's wild and scenic river designations. There's areas of critical environmental concern, and missing a bunch of different designations for this part of the world. I hate to sound pessimistic, but I think this is this probably isn't going to be going away. And I think it's important that this community remain engaged in these processes. I know there's a lot of folks in this room that may not be really excited about the NCA discussion. That's very understandable. You know, my family's homestead was incorporated into an NCA a few years ago, and that's definitely something that this conversation gets close to home for me. Sympathetic. I'm not from the West End, but I've spent quite a bit of time here. It's a special place. Without getting into too much detail, I mean, I think most everybody in this room wants to see this part of the world protected, but the nature of that protection matters. And drawing a line on a map might not be the way to do it. How do you maintain those relationships that you folks have cultivated with this landscape, and how do we engage you in these processes? That's not just a conversation for the folks in this room. That's a conversation happening across Western Colorado, across the Western U.S., across the Southwest, and across the entire country. How do we engage folks like you that actually have a working relationship with processes that are shaping? Those threats are not as cut and dry as some monument proponents and some special interest groups might lead you to believe. And I think the nature of the threats to these landscapes are changing. Folks, if people are going to be pushing conservation solutions, not only should folks be engaged in the process, process because you have valuable input. It's going to create viable solutions. That might sound a little touchy-feely for a lot of you, but I hope you can. I hope you remain engaged in this process. Reach out to your county representatives and folks that are advocate. That's right. I'll pass that along.
Well, I just wanted to also, I'm going to just insert just before we turn it over to you, but to a person, there was nobody that didn't want to just say, leave us alone. We felt strongly that if we said no, that we were going to have a monument. So we were kind of holding our breath to wait till the 20th got here to see if anything was going to happen or anything was going to get slipped under. But we needed to move forward on a process, which was the NCA, because that would allow us the broadest opportunity to reach out to you to see what you wanted. And that process could still go on. I think with the change in administration, we have to sort of look at our strategy. So I just want you to know that those conversations happened on this work group. We couldn't have 400 people on the work group, or we've never gotten anything done. But we feel like we did participate and did help to work the idea of just a monument, a blanket monument across the. And that was the most important thing to us, to a person. I think that we agree to that. So, and if you all have something else you'd like to say, I will share the microphone. But I'm going to turn it over to Jane for.
Thank you, Sue, and thank you to each of you for allowing me to be here and be a part of this, because as most of you know, I graduated from Nucla. I spent time in the UNOWEEK. This matters deeply to me, and I know it does to each one of you. Tonight, I'm here. I drove from Denver this morning and spent time at a board meeting today, but I'm here because I wanted to celebrate with you. I think it's a big deal. I think it's a big accomplishment that we did not get a monument designation, and each of you had a hand in that. So I think you should give yourselves another round of applause. So for that, thank you. I too did not prepare anything till the last 2 minutes. So a couple of notes I made. I wanted to thank you. You showed up, you spoke up, and I think that's critically important. We have to look forward. What's in our rearview mirror, our legacy, our heritage, and most recently this challenge to what we hold dear. So we have to look forward though. And to do that, we have to come together. So if you're a legacy family, whether you're a rancher, a miner, a recreator, or whether you've only been here for a year or two or a couple of months, we have to come together and hear our voices and be one in the end. But it's going to take us a while to get to one. I get that. I completely get that, because I have an idea. Kenny Heldman has an idea. Jody Weimer has an idea, and they're probably not all the same. But we can talk about it, and we can come to some solutions. I don't know if an NCA is the right answer, but I think we need to explore it. I told you guys when I was here, I think it was back in March when we had the meeting in Natarita, and I told you then that I felt like an NCA looked like a better option than a monument. I still agree that it does look like a better option, but there might be another option. I don't know. We need to have those conversations. The third option is to do nothing. But we have to understand there's consequences to each one of those options. And I personally don't think we can afford to do nothing. I'm here to listen. I'm here to hear what you have to say tonight. I appreciate that you're showing up. I appreciate that you're speaking up. I will be here to hear what you have to say. My voice is no more important, no less important than each of yours. But again, thank you for letting me be here.
And since Commissioner Davis couldn't be here from Mesa County, Amber's going to read his statement.
Evening. Commissioner Davis asked me to read the following. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my perspective. I appreciate the passion and dedication this community has for the Dolores area. I want to be clear, I do not support a national monument designation for this region. Such a designation comes with top-down federal rules and restrictions that disregard the needs and voices of those who live, work, and recreate here. However, I do believe a national conservation area offers a better path forward. Unlike a national monument, an NCA allows us to lock in rules for the area through collaboration and legislation. It ensures that local input shapes the policies that protect this unique landscape while maintaining the traditions and industries that are critical to our way of life. Without an NCA, we risk ongoing challenges being imposed by administrative fiat, decisions made in Washington with little regard for the people here. I understand the frustration and anger over any proposal that seems to threaten your autonomy or lifestyle. My goal is to work with you, not against you, to ensure that any decisions made here preserve both the beauty of the Dolores region and your ability to thrive as a community. We must find solutions that give us stability, not uncertainty. In my opinion, an NCA is the best option over the national monument or doing nothing approach, which leaves the door wide open to a future regulation and restriction. Thank you, Cody Davis.
And finally, I'm going to read John Ream's letter, and then we'll open it to public comment. Most of us know John Reams, lifetime area resident, local rancher, business owner, and of Reams Construction and Tomcat Mining Company Corporation since 2007. President of the Western Small Miners Association, former Southwest Resource Advisory Council for the BLM since 2010. I personally have claims in this debated area, and no one has more interest in the freedoms afforded us in public lands than myself and my family. I apologize for not being able to make this important meeting. First, congratulations. We beat the National Monument movement thanks to many of our area residents, most notably Sean Pond and Amy Tooker. These two warriors spearheaded the movement that has gotten us to this point. I wish to thank them personally now. And now that we have time, we can get everyone's ideas, but I would like to let you know why I'm in favor of the NCA and why Western Small Miners Association supported the Southern Dolores NCA. An NCA requires legislative action and therefore can only be modified with another legislative action, and therefore which takes years. Sorry, I was going to repeat that. Any future land grabs under another progressive administration would have to follow the guidelines to establish a monument over the NCA area. This should give us time to fight a future land grab. Otherwise, I agree, it is all protected and should be left alone. So with that, we're going to start the public comment period. If you have a comment or if you have a question of anybody on the panel, you all ready? Okay. I just have to say one thing. It was a pleasure to work with this work group, to have people that knew the region and knew mapping so well and were able to really talk us through different options and why something wouldn't work. And then with the mining influence, just areas that we knew needed to be untouched and that we would not want to jeopardize. With what Paul just said about the Energy Act, what was it called?
That was an
Executive order. So energy emergency. So we do acknowledge the critical minerals in this area, not to mention uranium and vanadium, that need to be protected and looked at. So with that, Chris is going to give us, the rules are 3 minutes. She's going to give you a 10-second grace before she has a vote.
Would you rather have 30 seconds notice?
I think people should say what they need to say. So if you know, let's be a little bit flexible. We would like to. Don't muzzle. Okay, so let's go ahead. Would anybody like to start first? Yeah, come on forward.
The journalists online are asking.
Okay, the journalists online.
Say your
I just had
name.
a question. My name is Tanya Wells, and my question was for you. And how was your homestead affected by an NCA?
Dramatically, I mean, I think that's, it's hard to answer in a since the NCA, I mean, it was an operating ranch for years after the NCA was in place. But since then the BLM has purchased the ranch, So this is a very different, a little bit different scenario, and I think the BLM is. There are pluses and minuses to any of these things. I
So
think
they didn't shut your roads to your house or anything like really dramatic and.
so, there are changes. I mean, I think it has a little bit more of a recreation. With people that do have a private building. They're not changing the rules for the private property necessarily, but I mean, you are getting a little bit more recreation. They're causing people to say, well, this should be ours. It's
One more quick question. Okay. My other question is, this whole thing started years and years ago in NCA that went all the way through. And Mesa County and Montrose County backed out because of people with environmental concerns wanting to expand an area. Is this back to the original footprint? Is it less than the original footprint, or is it more than the? What's bigger?
So this footprint, you can see on the maps there, and it is less than what was proposed like 10 years ago or whenever that was. Right? Or at least what we put forward.
This is not solidified, this is not ratified, this is not, there's nothing permanent about anything in these maps. These are a proposal that the group put forward in response to the national monument. This is, there's nothing solid about anything else. And we can discuss any sort of questions y'all have about that, but this isn't a permanent thing by any means, and it's not been recognized. I think that's important.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on, we did not submit any formal proposal. Basically, the work group spent time looking at maps, talking about boundaries, talking about areas that needed to be protected because of your interests. 10 meetings. An NCA takes years. I mean, the Montrose one was like 11 years in the making. So it takes a long time. You get a lot of community input. There's a lot of work. Another step on up. All right.
John Reed, one simple question. Will you listen to our voices or will you decide?
I think it's critical that we hear what you're saying, and that's why every one of us are here. I drove almost 400 miles to get here tonight, to hear what you have to say, to hear what you have to say, to hear what every single one of you have to say. I think that's true of this whole group. That's why we're here. But we need your input. We can't just, we have to find solutions. Is do nothing an option? There's consequences to that. We need to have that conversation, what those consequences are. So bring your ideas, bring your solutions. Tell us, we're here to hear you.
Well, and I would say that, absolutely, if everybody has a say-so in this, but we also have to recognize our tax district, town of Nucla, town of Natterby, and the fire department. They were severely affected when the coal plant and the coal mine closed. And so having their input and what they want to see and how it affects the communities and how it affects those taxes are really important. So having those conversations with municipalities and tax districts are very important. And I want to hear from everybody, but they have a lot of responsibility, especially here, especially with the public lands surrounding the community. So this really affects them. And it'll be interesting to hear what they have to say and how they will move forward.
I also want to say that things were moving so fast and we were trying to get something out there so that we had a proposal counteract what the NGOs were proposing. We did not have an opportunity to put that out to the public for you to
key, but we were trying to do our best, knowing what you guys would want based on people that are local. So not only did we not hear from you guys during this process, but there were also the public lands that we did not hear from either. So this was just a beginning of the process. We need to hear from everybody in the future. And like everyone else has said, we encourage you to let us know what you're thinking and continue with this process. Don't let this be the last time you come to these meetings. Continue to give your input throughout this entire process. That may take years. Thank you.
I always give my best speech in the pickup on the way home, just so you know. So just know.
Would you tape it?
Maybe. I have to tell you guys a little bit of a story. So remember when Senator Bennett came and did the eco flight thing and all of that? Well, he stopped in the Uinta Canyon on our ranch, talked to us there. Then we went to Gateway and we had a conversation. And I asked Scott Braden, because they kept saying, you guys need to come to the table. You need to tell us, come to the table. And Fana says, well, where the hell is the table? That's what I want to know. I said, how do we get our hands on this map that you keep telling us about? And Scott Braden and I were walking out to our cars, and he very flippantly said to me, well, why don't you guys build your own map? Well, I had from Gateway to Nucla to think about it. And when I caught up with Sue and Cody, the commissioners, we had a conversation. I said, why don't we put together a map so we can start this conversation? They keep telling us they have a map, but we can't see it. So let's start this conversation. So this point is to start the conversation so that we can hear from you.
I just want you to want that. My answer is yes.
I do want to underscore, we had a very short timeline and we were under the impression that this was going to go into a land package. And that what we were really concerned about is that a monument was going to get pushed in there and that this land package was, and we were told we had to decide and figure something out by October, at least have the beginning of the process done. So that's where the urgency and the timeline crunch was pretty critical. And so we, between I think July and October, we met those 10 times trying to figure this out. So that was certainly part of the whole thing. Other comments? Come on up. Well, wait.
I've got a couple questions.
Come on up.
And this is just feedback from
And
what
say
I'm
your
hearing
name.
tonight. Tricia Murray, Montrose County.
Okay,
Tricia Murray, Montrose County. And I have some questions, so hopefully I'll get it done within my 3-minute time period. You're saying that there are consequences if we don't do anything. What are those consequences? Anybody?
In my humble opinion, the consequences are that in a couple of years, we'll be under the gun again for another monument designation.
Okay. Thank you for saying that. Is there any 100% guarantee that if we allow the NCA designation to come about, that it will 100% protect from a monument going in after the map? We just had a conversation. I don't know.
So the only thing that's 100% guaranteed is we're all going to die. Okay. And the other thing is we probably better pay taxes. Those are the two things that are 100%. So I can't promise you, but here's what I do know. And that is it takes a legislative action to create some of these designations. And it'll take legislative action to make any changes. Could that happen? I can't stand here and tell you absolutely no, but I can stand here and tell you with pretty darn close to certainty that if we do nothing, they'll be back with the monument designation.
Okay.
When?
So follow up.
I don't know about your boss. So, just to follow up on that, that's one thing that Wyoming did in 1950 is they put a provision in their act saying that it could only be designated by Congress. So that's why there's been no national monument designated in Wyoming. But what BLM is using now is the ACEC's lands. And So, but we could put a provision in with the NCA saying it cannot be a national monument ever, unless by a congressional act. But, you know, that just gives us grounds to fight what we need to fight in the Supreme Court if anything like that happens. So there is a way, we can put it in legislation.
So what I'm hearing you say, what I'm hearing, run faster, Sue, is that you can put the language into accepting an NCA for this area that says it cannot be turned into a monument. Okay. I heard somebody say that we had a really short timeline, that you had to come up with something by October. Who set that timeline?
It was, they were gonna submit,
Who's saying?
the senators were gonna submit a public lands package for.
Right.
No, it was Biden, it was the senators wanted, Senator Bennett, Senator Hickenlooper wanted to put in a public, they were gonna put in a public lands package, I think they actually did. So we, and then as the October date neared, it was pretty clear that wasn't gonna happen, and we were kind of, so do you want to speak to this, Paul? I can see you kind of. Yes. Okay.
The other state that has had restrictions against future public land withdrawals is Alaska. And what happened this past year, much to the chagrin of Senator Lisa Murkowski, the Biden administration and the Department of the Interior unilaterally acted against Alaska. And the background is